welcome to this new episode of the Water Talks podcast. I'm your host, Els Vanbeckevoort, and I'm very happy to be joined by my co-host, Scott Bowron. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Hi, Els. It's going great and nice to see you again on our podcast. Moving forward, more great information. I'm excited.
Yeah, me as well, for sure. I know that, we've talked a little bit about growers and greenhouses before, but I'm looking forward to, expanding that conversation today for sure.
Sure. And before we start, Els, for those who haven't heard February's podcast, you take a tune in, take a listen, learn more about pump selection. We had a great chat and how
Mm-hmm.
they are part of a process and how they can significantly help your system.
Yeah, exactly. We had an episode last year for our listeners who were able to join us. Actually, that was at the Canadian Greenhouse Conference where we talked a little bit about the do's and don'ts for managing water quality risk and waste prevention in greenhouses. And so, briefly, we'll just go over them again as we introduce our topic because we're diving right back into the world of growing plants. And so, the what not to do's. Only treating symptoms generally that leads to a lot of waste, not using objective benchmarks. So, managing your risk with some data and some good analytical tools is absolutely essential. And then using suboptimal solutions to solve a particular problem. And, problems happen everywhere. There's nothing wrong with that, but just not integrating it into a holistic approach that, kind of makes sense for your operation as well.
And things what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Understand all systems and how they are connected to waste reduction.
Right.
And gaining digital insight into microbiological and chemical water risk. So understanding the process, and then use your knowledge base analytical tools, and it can help you to become so much more proactive, which is seeing what's
Exactly.
going to happen.
Right, right. Water quality is key to all stakeholders, often misunderstood or sometimes underestimated. And I think Chris will be able to share some of his thoughts on that. And that's also true for greenhouses, it's true for pools, it's true for all water users, really. And so, greenhouses, of course, are essential to our existence. They provide us with nutritious food, beautiful plants that bring us much joy and good health throughout the months. And so,
Yes, let's get to it. Today we are so delighted to welcome Chris Wood, head grower at Proplant Propagation. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, Els.
hey, how are you, Chris?
Pretty good,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's it's a different chat for us, but really it's water and really an interesting concept. I'm really excited to chat with you today, Chris. So let's find out who Chris is and who Wood is. Can you give us a little bit of background, where you came from, your background, history, education, etc.?
Yes, well, I've been at Proplant Propagation Services for over 2 years now as their head grower. I've grown pretty much everything and anything throughout my career. Everything from hydrangeas, vegetable propagation, gerberas, tomatoes, peppers, a little bit of cucumbers, eggplant. It's quite varied. Um, yeah, I've been doing this for, I think, 2011, 2012, somewhere in that time period. Graduated Niagara College, and then since then, just really started growing plants and have really enjoyed the science behind it. Really, before I was in agriculture, I was a welder, and when I saw people working in farmers' fields or in greenhouses, you always expect it to really be, plant the seed, watch it grow. Well, it's really a lot more than that. It's any science discipline really is involved in it, and you can branch out in any which way. And that's really excited me over my career, and look forward to continuing it.
Yeah. Because maybe then, sorry, Scott, go ahead. I was going to say, how did you end up, at ProPlant, I guess, or how did you end up there? But
Yeah, well, it really shows you how networking is important. One of the owners, one of the co-owners of ProPlant Propagation Services, Paul Burkle, and I were actually classmates in college.
yeah,
And we kept contact over the years. Anytime I'd come to visit the area, I would come by, see his place, see how it's going. And then, there was a time when they were looking for a new head grower, and I was actually living out in BC and had been talking to my partner about moving back to Ontario, and literally those days just matched perfectly. And
Wow.
we had a conversation. 2 days later, there was a job offer, and 2 months later, I was here.
Wow. That's
And
cool.
here you are. Welcome back to Ontario. Tough to leave BC and come to Ontario. Must have been.
Yeah, it's well, it's interesting.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are in a nice part of Ontario. It's not so bad. Every time I
No,
visit there, there's no snow in the winter, so I like it a lot already.
oh, it was like 20 degrees today. It's absolutely insane.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Very
So,
cool.
what else do you do, Chris? Like, do you have hobbies? What do you do when you're not working?
Well, as a head grower, all I'd ever do is work. No, outside of growing plants, I, funny enough, really love to garden. Gardening is one of my favorite things to do. On the side, I like to tinker with automation, IoT, Internet of Things, etc. And I love to play music. Pretty much any stringed instrument there is, I'll play it.
That's excellent. Maybe, Chris, if we could just talk a little bit about, your current company, like what does Proplant do? What does your job look like? What does your day look like? I know you're a very busy guy, but give our audience a little bit of insight.
Yeah, so Proplant Propagation Services, we grow vegetable seedlings for the larger greenhouses. So it's not the same seedlings that you're going to find at the Lowe's or Rona or whatever it's called now, or your general garden center. We grow the vegetable seedlings for the large producers that if you head out to like the Leamington area where there's row upon row of greenhouses, they're filled with seedlings. Well, they don't grow their own seedlings. We propagate them because we have the infrastructure for it and the really the knowledge to do it here, as they are completely different plants than what they are planting in their greenhouse.
Right. And I guess like you grow them from a seed to,
Yes.
what like how many weeks is it before you ship them out?
Yeah, well, our plant so everything is grown from seed. Anything from a cucumber in the summer can be 20 days, and we have peppers and tomatoes that are 50 plus days.
Right. So it depends a little bit on the plant and I guess
Yeah, and
how much light and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And then customer demands as well, right? So if a customer might want a smaller plant or they might want a larger plant or they want a certain stage of development. So we kind of know the different varieties, the different plants, at different times of years, how we need to achieve those plants and how much time it will take.
So Chris, tell us like what's involved in a greenhouse? Because, I know I've been to some greenhouses. I don't know, Scott, if you've had a chance to visit any greenhouses. Maybe for our listeners, it would be interesting to kind of conceptualize and say, okay, what's involved? Like what's in there? What does it look like?
There's lots of plants. So like our greenhouse is a little bit different than what most people might think. If you're into a vegetable greenhouse, a lot of them will grow in these cocoa slabs, or potentially on troughs or on the ground. Our greenhouse is pretty much 100% concrete. So it's ebb and flood floors, which means that we have large cisterns that hold our water, and we use that water to what we'll call flood, which is to fill up these bays of concrete and plants with water, irrigate them, and then let the water go back down and into a reuse tank where it is cleaned, sterilized, filtered out, so we can use it again.
Yes. And so on the top end, you've lights as well as, of course, you have the sunlight. Like what does that look like?
Oh, on the top end, so we have peaks with venting that can control the climate in there. There's pipes that we use natural gas for heating, so there's pipes everywhere that control heat through our boiler system. We have HPS lights, some LED lights as well, to illuminate our plants for certain amounts of time per year. And then after that, then there's our plants, the floors, and then piping underneath our floors for our outgoing and incoming water.
So Chris, I'm just going to summarize what you said and tell me if I'm wrong or correct or some close. Basically, you're taking what nature does and expediting it. Is that?
Yeah, we're trying to control it a little bit more, right? Sometimes we don't like how cold it is outside. Sometimes We don't like how much of a lack of sun there is, right? We want to be able to control which aspects we can now. Sometimes in the summer, we can't really do much when it's 30 degrees outside. We're not getting 15 degrees inside of our greenhouse. That's just not possible with our current technology that we but when we can say in the winter, especially during our busy months, when it's negative 20 outside, we might want 20 degrees in our greenhouse, and we're able to do that quite well. And that kind of changes a lot of the things, right? So once you start putting in that much heat, when you're trying to make up that much heat of, 20 degrees or 30 degrees in temperature, right? That changes everything from your climate to your humidities to really the airflow of the greenhouse itself, which then changes the generative or vegetative growth of the plants. So a plant will be more wanting to kind of create leaves over flowers in a simple term.
Which you don't want. Well, you want a bit of both, I guess.
A little bit of both. It depends on really the customer needs, right? Certain times of the year, they're going to aim for a certain kind of plant, whereas in other times of the year, they're going to want another style of plant.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, that's a big operation, eh?
Yes, it's right now it's 20 acres of somewhere around 20 acres of growing area, and we're in the middle of an expansion, and it will be 26 acres after that.
Wow! So
you could do a lot of walking there, Scott, if you were.
Yeah, I don't track my steps, but I know people get pretty high up there.
Yeah. So I want to catch something you said early on, Chris, about using the water. So you have cisterns that you capture water and then use it and then clean it and reuse it.
Yes.
Correct?
That is correct.
And we're dealing with water and water reuse, try to have good sustainability. So just kind of a baseline, where does chlorine come into all this? Chlorination systems, do you use chlorine?
Yeah, so we use our city water. So our water all comes from the city, from the Nanticoke water system. And it comes in with just a low amount, 1.5 ppm of chlorine coming in through the water. So what we do is we adjust our pH levels to make it more effective. So that way we know anything coming in has a higher level of cleanliness to it, right? Because the city water is going to take out pathogens that are going to affect you and me as people, but they don't care about plants. Really, that's not their job, is to make sure that the water is clean enough for us to water our plants. Because we deal with millions and millions of plants every year, problems for us can spread very quickly. So we want to do our best job to ensure that we have the cleanest start so that we can fight anything that will come in with a little bit more ease.
Wow.
Yeah. And Chris, you also use like a little bit of chlorine, I guess, in your cleaning regimens as well, right? That's a normal standard practice in the greenhouse, I guess.
Yes, that is correct as well. And using those same philosophies, though with a higher ppm, we'll head about a 10 ppm chlorine level, and we'll do that with, we'll make sure every surface a couple times a year gets this chlorine treatment with a lower pH, with a controlled pH of around the 7 mark.
Yeah.
That
and the greenhouse
way,
is empty, right? It's when the greenhouse is empty.
Yes. When the greenhouse is empty, that way, when crops are in and out, we can do something about it. We also see if we ever see, because we take a lot of measurements of a lot of data points really for our water. If we see trends that are not going the way we want, or we see that we have higher risks, we'll actually empty out our tanks because we have multiple tanks. We can store it from one area. We will actually use chlorine in our cisterns as well because it is porous and it's very good for holding bacteria. So we will watch our trends, and if we see that, we use peroxide as an agent as well. If we see that the demand for peroxide is a lot higher, we will come in with chlorine, not to the water itself, but to the to the concrete cistern, just to make sure that any of those little spots that can come and hide, like bacteria can hide, we can get rid of, or at least
right. Maybe
Control.
before we do a deep dive into more of the water story, I suppose. Like, tell us a little bit about what you like most about your work, I guess, because I know you're like you wear many hats. I know it's a complicated job. So,
Yeah.
what's your day look like? Like, what do you like the most, and maybe what do you find the most challenging?
Challenging.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
what I like the most, well, just we're talking about water right now, and that's a big part of it. And the fact that you can use so many disciplines of science to me is one of the most the fun of it, right? It's not you're never going in and dealing with the same thing every single day. There's always something here. There's always something here, and it's about understanding what's going on and following trends and understanding, okay, if we're dealing with some sort of insect or disease, right, it's not just, oh, we have X problem. It's, okay, well, this problem here has a life cycle that's like this. We need to understand this. Well, that opens it up to other aspects, different, other disciplines that, okay, well, hydrology being one, the chemistry, the biology of it all. And it can just keep, if it ends in ology, it's probably part of it. That's one of my favorite parts about doing this is it's never the same. The challenges though is everything really has to be perfect, right? We grow plants for other people who are growers. So when we produce a plant, I always say, we're not producing a plant for the consumer. Right? If you're going out and you're going to your retail garden center and you see your geranium, you're going to pick up a geranium. It's red. I'm happy. That's the red geranium I want. Well, the people we're growing for, well, we're growing different plants for them, but okay, they're going to pick up that tomato. They're going to pick up that cucumber. Right? These are people who have been growing these plants for 20 plus years. They're going to be able to look at that and see every little mistake you make, everything that you've done well, everything that you've done not well, areas to improve. Reasons why they like us more than other companies, why they like other companies more than us.
right.
Those challenges, you can't just mask a mistake. That's what I really like about it. It's every day you just have to be on it because, yeah, if you don't have a good day, it can show very quickly.
Wow.
Right? A cucumber plant at 20 days, right? That's 5% of its life every day, right? For a couple of those days, it's not even up. So you can even say that the time it's showing green to the time it goes to a customer, it's more than 5%. You make a mistake, that's say 5 years. Right? Imagine making a mistake that lasts with you for 5 years, right? If you're a kid or a teenager or even an adult, right? Those are the things that you carry with you throughout your life. And we're selling plants to people who can see that. That's a challenge. It's part of the reason I love it though, right?
So both the opportunity.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, both the opportunity and the challenge for sure.
Yeah.
You need to read a little Zen, Chris, to keep the perfection of life. That's perfect. That's a tough challenge, man. I love it. And water. We're going to talk more and more about water and realizing how it can change and how it changes everything downstream, upstream, everywhere. So it's an interesting job you have there.
For sure. Maybe, Chris, like what are some of the challenges that, you touched on a few already, I guess, in terms of water quality. Like I know it matters to you greatly, and, we've had some really good conversations because I mentioned to Scott, as I've come to know you, you really appreciate the science and you want to kind of really get right into it, which is great for me because I love that too. But maybe for our listeners, what does that look like for a greenhouse as you think about managing water quality? Like what are some of the challenges that you have to deal with on a daily basis?
Well, yeah. So first and foremost, a lot of people think nutrition is a big one, but to me, nutrition it's definitely important. But it's actually the biological load in that water is where the real risk and concern for me is. It's
right.
We're reusing this water. We're using multiple stages of filtration or sanitization to that water just to keep it clean. Because when we are putting water, like I said before, we're putting it into the bays where the plants are. Anything that plant might have, if it has a fungal disease, it can easily now spread throughout that water. There's foot traffic, right? we have biosecurity here. We have people who watch it, but we monitor things like our peroxide levels, looking for demands, just because we know that if people are going to be in there, right? If we have 100 people in an area and then we're going to be watering right after, well, anywhere they could have been is on the bottom of their shoes. And that's now all part of that water system. That doesn't just go away. But we need to make sure that we can mitigate those risks and see those risks and understand those risks before they happen, so that we know that we're going to do enough. That we are just kind of coasting every day, saying it was good yesterday, so it should be good today. Oh, it should be good tomorrow. Well, that's not how. Oh, it'd be nice if it worked that way. It really would be, but it doesn't work that way, because one day there might be no risk, or another day it could be 35 degrees and that water temperature is nice and high. There's a lot of turbidity in that water because people have been walking through there, or there's been a lot of shipping, so there's a lot of particulate matter in the water. Well, now all of a sudden that water has a lot of spots for fungus and bacteria to grow on, and the temperature's warm, so that life cycle is going to be faster and faster, and it's going to multiply at an alarming rate. So those are kind of the risks that you need to look at. There's just all these aspects. It's like anything that touches that water is going to affect what's in there, because no matter who you are, you're not 100% clean. There's something on every one of our fingernails. There's something on every one of our shoes, everybody's pants. And it might be small, but it builds every time.
Very true.
Interesting.
So maybe what has helped you then to look and manage water risk differently? Like what, I know that as I listen to you talk, I'm like, wow, that sounds really good. That's exactly true. But, how did you come to this place?
Well, actually, Els, you've been very big help in this, talking with companies like San Ecotech, where they've really brought down, and not just for myself, but we have a large growing team, and really showing them that, at least for everybody, the basics of understanding, hey, this is where your risks are, and this is what you need to look out for, and this is what you need to monitor, and this is how you can. They really gave us the Water Health Index, which is an area that we can input our data, so that way we can review that data, and some people on our watering team who have a little bit more experience will take a look at that data and analyze it a little bit closer and look for these risks.
Right. And do you think that, was it hard for you guys to kind of go on this digital journey? Like, was that a difficult thing to get going with, or did you find
No, I personally, I found it, it depends really. Like for me personally, and for the team that we have here, no, it was very straightforward and it worked very well. But it takes work on our end too, right? It's not just,
right.
Oh, it's there and okay, there it is. But no, we have to do the work. We have to do testing, right? We have to invest in the tools to do that testing as well.
Yes.
And invest our time in understanding not just what these results mean, but also, right, not only just, how should I say this, not just what these results mean, but taking the time to look and analyze the data, right? Just really get in deep, because we have data from a year ago. Well, we're testing more right now than we were a year ago. So some of that data definitely has value, but it's about comparing them to those data now that you're grabbing more data and you're seeing these areas where you might be lacking or you might be strong. And that goes with same for 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were doing minimal testing, and now we see a little bit of problems. Okay, we need to expand on this. Okay, we need to expand on this. So to me, it's been really streamlined in the way we've done it, and the knowledge has been there, but it definitely takes, takes time, effort, and investment. It really does.
Oh. Maybe for Scott, go ahead, Scott. Sorry,
Sure.
You were going to say something.
So Chris, taking those tools, so is what we on the introduction we talked about being proactive. So with that kind of tool set, you start to anticipate what's going to happen. Was that a fair assessment?
Yes. So that's kind of us using our data at the same time, right? So I keep mentioning peroxide, and I know peroxide is not necessarily the best sanitizer, but it is definitely helpful. But we actually use it a lot as a gauge of our organic material in our water on a daily basis. Now we do other testing for a little bit more insight. But on a day-to-day, we found it to be a very good tool, because we know that peroxide will attach itself to organic material and dissipate. So if we're adding 20 ppm of peroxide and we have 5 ppm the next day, say we know that the demand is going to be, we have more organic material in that water system than if we start with 20 and we have 18 the next day. So we really kind of use that as our baseline to look. So originally we used that as we kept chasing it. We had these ideas of what we wanted to be, and we kept trying to get there. But what we've learned over the time is that, okay, we have 20 and we have 5. Well, if we keep just trying to get to that 20, it's not good enough. We found that what we really need is, it's going to sound weird, stabilized peroxide. We want a number that we understand that will fluctuate throughout the year, but we want a number that we can find that things are steady. So we found that if I'm going to use 20 as an example. If we have 20 and that was the right number and that's everything is nice and stable, one day is 20, the next day is 20, the next day is 20. But if we hit 25 one day, it will be 30 the next day and 35, because there's going to be more into the system than there is biological load. And same with the other way. If we're aiming for 20 and then the next day we have 5, we can't just keep putting 20 in there. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe I'll explain a little bit for Scott's benefit as well. So the Water Health Index, of course, is an objective tracking of aggregated data. So not just individual key performance indicators, but all of the information together objectively calculates a value that you can track and that you can follow to see how your water quality is doing. But within that system, there are a number of knowledge-based tools that have been developed, with some of our key stakeholders that basically are able to take advantage of those opportunities for managing or identifying risk in the first place, and then managing risk in a smart way, like Chris is saying, rather than over treatment, with a particular disinfectant, or over treatment with this or that, or under treatment in some situations. It helps you to truly identify, okay, where is the risk and how do we need to mitigate it so that, it's not going to end up being a serious problem. And that's really the whole goal behind all of it, in ways that are manageable, I guess, Chris, and not necessarily the most complicated, because you can't, you could have a whole laboratory in a pool, Scott, you could have a whole laboratory in a greenhouse, but you'd be doing nothing else all day long, but trying to keep that laboratory and those laboratory standards working, and it would be very onerous and complicated, and not necessarily keeping you busy with your core business. And so the idea is that there's ways in which you can fairly in a straightforward way track some of those particular either chemical or microbiological risks, so that you can, like Chris says, you can be proactive, make a more consistent process, right, Chris? Does that make sense? It's kind of
that
like
was
that.
So much nicer. You said that so much more nicer than I did. That was very well said.
Well,
that's what I meant, but with a lot smoother.
But you do it. You're doing it. So, like, I might be able to say it, but you guys are living it, and doing it every day, and that makes.
You're taking a process and you've now taken it and you're using it on a day-to-day basis. So
yeah, and it really helped us, I guess, see what we need to focus on and find a way that works for us. And that kind of goes back to asking if it was a difficult adjustment. Well, I guess that there was some adjustment in there. But once we've kind of found it, now we've been able to lock in a little bit more and more, because we have the data sets and we know or we're learning anyways. I wouldn't say we know, because we don't know everything. But we're learning more and more about what we need to look at and where potential issues and risks are coming from.
Right. And I guess, Chris, as you mentioned before, like, it is a question of getting statistically reliable data sets. So, if you've got only a couple of data points, it's a little bit difficult to, truly do trend analysis, and from that trend analysis develop some advanced analytical tools. That becomes much more possible once you have some good data sets where you're confident that you have good data, right? That you can analyze that data and start to use it in that more proactive way, as Scott mentioned before. Maybe, if there's growers listening, or people, stakeholders within the industry, How does it differ from your normal kind of greenhouse automation or nutrient system? Because we get asked that question a lot to say, well, I'm already tracking my nutrients, or I'm sending my my water analysis off to the laboratory, and I'm good. I don't have any water problems. Like, what would you say to somebody like that based on where you guys started from and how you're doing now?
A few years ago, I was probably the same way, right? What really is if you're going to send something out for testing, you're going to see a problem after it's already there, right? Which in most cases is probably okay, and you're probably still going to be able to get ahead of it until you're not, right? That risk that's not just your livelihood; it's the company's livelihood, and in our cases, it's livelihood of others, right? It's not just our farm. Sorry, on our farm, we're not growing for one other farm. We're growing for multiple of the farms at the same time. If you are too late to see the problem, then you're too late, and then everything is exposed to that risk. I'm not saying that. That being said, if you are monitoring all the time, you are still going to miss things, but the chances of you catching something, especially something large, is a lot more, is mitigated a lot more, right? We have someone on staff that a big part of their job is looking for these trends, diving into the data, diving into all these data points that we've collected, because we want them to be able to see, hey, I think there might be a problem here. I want to hear that today, not 5 days from now when we send a test out, or we get our test results back, or 5 days from now when we have dead plants, because we didn't really do our due diligence. And that's really what it's come down to me is we have the tools, the knowledge is there, and people are want to know. People really want to share that information. So
using that science, really using, and Elsa, correct me if I'm, whether it's a drinking water system, or whether it's a pool system, or whether it's a growing
Greenhouse.
system.
Yep.
Understanding the science, using the science, not just saying, yeah, like really using that science and then projecting it forward, right? The knowledge base that we carry now, and the knowledge of not only instrumentation, but microbiological understanding is growing so quickly that now Chris has taken it and made it happen in a growing operation.
And I guess, Chris, we have a pool, one of our pool clients, he's a technical person like you. And he always says, we don't know what we don't know.
and ignorance is bliss sometimes, but not all the time.
And that's the challenge, because, before we started working in the pool space with this particular person, he said there was a lot of things that they thought they knew, but, they didn't really fully grasp or understand. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, because water is very complicated. And Chris, I think you'd be the first to, to agree with me on that, it's not straightforward. It has lots of different inputs and outputs and potential cross-contamination and lots of influences. And what I was going for at the beginning of our conversation was, look, a greenhouse is complicated. There's people everywhere. There's light, there's media, there's nutrients, there's lots of variables. I call it a system of systems. And so having a way to, I guess, take a very complicated issue and try and make sense of it in tangible ways. I imagine, in that way, it's empowering, or at least it's meant to be empowering for, the people that use those kinds of systems.
Yeah, well, I like it really, at the end of the day, it makes things easier, because if something has bacteria or fungus or something, it doesn't just go away.
No.
Right? It's there. It's going, right? The fungus's job is to live and procreate or recreate, just continue to grow and build and build. So once it's there, it's not easy to get rid of. But if we can work on it and get ahead of it before it's a problem, or even delay it becoming a problem,
right?
Then the chances of that crop being successful down the road is higher.
Exactly.
Well, Chris, I'm fairly in awe of what you do. And before we even think about the rest of our day, I want to thank you, because the work you do every day provides food to people, and whatever you grow ends up somewhere, right? And provides a good thing. I'm excited that I have 2 hibiscus that I've been growing now for like 6 months, and I haven't killed yet. It's the first thing
That's
I've
awesome.
lived in my life. I'm very proud of myself, and to think what you do every day, that's just incredible. I'm amazed at this.
Yes, but you say that, but for what you do is not something I could do, right? So we all have our strengths, right?
Right, exactly.
It takes a team, that's for
It
sure.
does, and that's good when you're saying, what we do here, right? There's a lot of people involved, right? This is not a one-man show. This is a lot of people that we all rely on each other and communicate and take everything that we know and put it together, and we talk to our competitors, our clients about things, just because we all as an industry want to improve, because there are issues in our industry that are more than just one company.
Right.
And if somebody has it, somebody else probably has it. And that's one thing about the greenhouse industry in general, is that we all want to work together, at least to some degree, to help us all succeed.
And there's such a critical need, right? So having sustainable food production is probably one of the most important things we could be doing, and doing it in a way that reduces the amount of waste and has the best possible outcomes, I guess, and reduces the amount of toxic load and other things like that. I think I really love that idea. And in fact, I see it every time that I go to a conference. I think that that's very much at the forefront of everybody's work, that, they're trying to do this in the best possible way, right? Using the most beneficial tools in the process. Maybe in summary, perhaps to our listeners, Chris, if they were at the beginning of this, like they were, not yet doing very much, or doing the conventional thing where, if you have a problem, you respond to it, you're managing your nutrient system, you're maybe sending off some DNA multi-scans for looking at specific pathogens. Like, how would you begin to, what would your recommendations be, I guess, for those listeners to say, hey, take a different approach, maybe, consider going digital, and start tracking and benchmarking your data? How would you go about that?
Well, that's exactly it. I think you just really want to start with the question, why? Why are these problems happening? And then are we doing enough to mitigate them? But if you don't know why the problems are starting, how do you know if you are doing enough to really stop anything from happening or prevent it?
Right.
So working with some consultation or digitizing your data is very, very important, because then you have that paper trail to look back at and say, okay, well, I noticed during these months I have a higher increase in one of my issues. Well, then, okay, it goes back to that why question. Why do we have a larger increase? Okay, well, if we don't have the answer, then we need to find that answer, right? Okay, let's look at turbidity. Let's look at our water temperature. Let's look at one of our other key indicators. And if we're not collecting that, well, then we need to start collecting it, because maybe that will give you the insight. And if not, well, then at least you have that data point, and you know that maybe that's not an influence. And then you pick another or multiple other key indicators. Then you might start to see, hey, maybe that is, even though I didn't think it was important, now it is, because I see how that actually changes without those trends. Right? It's all related. It all goes in your water. So every little aspect of it is important. So to start, ask yourself why. Why do you have problems? And is it worth the risk, I guess, is another one, right?
And if people say, I don't have any problems, because we hear that quite a bit as well. I don't have problems. Yeah, whether it's a pool customer, everything is fine. We're compliant. We're doing, everything that we need to do. We're not concerned about it. What would you say to someone like that who thinks that everything is good?
Well, you don't have a problem until it's too late, right? Of course, everything is fine, and right, that's exactly it. Everything is fine, and what's that risk worth to you, right? If you're in a greenhouse and you have 100,000 plus plants, or if you're growing flowers, some of these places that grow flowers are on the scale of 1 million plus. Like we at times have over 5 million plants in the flower.
Wow.
Like that risk. Okay, if we have a problem, that's a huge risk. So for us to say, oh, everything is fine, sure, we can say it, but and you know what, we might get lucky all the time and nothing happens. But we have someone escape protocols, or it rains and there's something on the roof and it just happens to get into our system, right? We now increase, all those plants are now at risk. And to me, it's not worth that risk. And I know for those, the owners of Proplant, it's not a risk that's tolerable. There's just too much
Yeah.
at stake.
And
Yeah,
when
they're
you
pretty
say there's,
proactive.
Chris, you're saying dollars?
No, plants,
No,
like 5 million plants.
the risk.
Financial risk. Yeah, yeah, no, the financial risk is not worth it. But even still, okay, even if you want to move it to pools, you might have no risk. You might think everything is okay, but the wrong person gets sick, right? That pool is getting shut down. That person is definitely going to sue, right? There's all these things that can happen just because ignorance. I said ignorance is bliss. Sometimes.
Everything's good.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I have a
sure.
question for you though, Chris. Going back to your introduction, so you're a musician.
I am.
What kind of musician? Like piano, guitar?
Play bass. What did I say? Play bass, guitar, ukulele, a little bit of harmonica, a little bit of drums, a little bit of piano, but I wouldn't say that much. Some vocals, anything I can get my hands on.
Wow. And do you play in front of people or just at home?
Actually, prior to COVID, I used to play it a lot. I was in 2 bands when I lived out west, and then COVID kind of came and shut a lot of that down, and I haven't really started it back up yet, but still play a lot at home, but eventually I'll get it back out there. I'm not too worried.
Wow.
Chris is going to write us a song about water, Scott. He's promised.
Yeah,
So
I will.
yeah, so we're looking forward to getting that from him for sure. Chris, I think maybe just to go back to your previous point, I think risk is something that we're trying to really now quantify with and for clients, because there's a cost element and there's also a reputational element.
Yes.
There are lots of different things involved in risk management. And then, there's also waste prevention. And last year, that was my talk at the Canadian Greenhouse Conference, is how do we prevent waste? And that's really the key, prevention, rather than our dealing with waste is much more complicated and costly and difficult. And so there's a sustainability piece, there's a risk piece, and there's a cost piece. And so we're trying to help to quantify that in very specific ways so that people can say, hey, you know what, there's lots of opportunity for improvement. And I think in general, I think that culture exists in Proplant. I see it a lot, where there is a real desire to improve continuously. And I think that's in the first place, I think, is the right attitude that you need to have, right?
Yeah. 100%, right? It's why waste something, right? There, you got to think about that. Is when you are wasting, that you've already put the inputs into things, right? That's money that you've already put into the system that you need to get rid of, but you can't always just get rid of things, right? We're talking about water, like we're talking about like each one of our cisterns, off the top of my head, is 250,000,000 liters of water. There's a little bit, actually a little bit more than that. So for us to just waste water because we made a mistake, it's not a viable option, right? It's a lot of water, it's a lot of fertilizer, it's a lot of
everything,
all of our inputs that we've put into it. But if we can kind of culture our water in a way and understand it, not only is it better, like that, not only is it better for everything, the environment and the business itself, but we can control it a little bit more too, right? If we have that cultured water, it's kind of a loose term of culture, but it's something that we can understand and we can have it can be very stable for what we know. If we remove all that water and bring new water in and fertilize it and do what we do to it, well, all of a sudden it's a very blank slate. Some people might say that's good, but too blank of a slate means that there's a lot of opportunity for negative impacts on that water.
Like temperature, Scott, like temperature. Same in a swimming pool. Bringing in cold water is a major problem. Because you got to heat it and you got to treat it.
Is from a potable water source from a municipal water source. So
Right.
there are things in it, just you have to
Yeah.
change it.
But if we've had that water for a while, and some of that water goes to the plant, so we do replenish the amount of water, replenish some of it.
Right.
So it's not like it just sits there for 3 months and is the same exact water, but it's a slow turnover. It's like it keeps getting cycled through the biological system of our greenhouse every
like
time
a
it
ship.
gets used.
Like a ship, Scott, that you shouldn't really do any sudden movements. You should keep it steering more or less in the right direction, because if you swing it around, you're in
Right.
your problems.
Yeah. We're talking very similar language to my language, right? That I use.
I know. I thought you'd like it.
really
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
The end.
Chris, is there anything that Scott and I haven't asked you that you would like to share with our audience, or anything that we've missed? Like, I think it's been really useful for people to get a handle on, generally what's involved. Obviously, growers will know everything you're talking about because it's their world, but, also from a water quality perspective, I think you've said some really meaningful and useful things. But is there anything else that we've missed that you'd like to maybe call out as we're wrapping up together?
No, I think that just a big one, it's not really something we've missed, it's just to say it again, is really just understand your water, because if you can understand your water, you can not necessarily foresee problems happening, but you can get ahead of them. You increase the likelihood of you being able to get ahead of things. And risk management is everything.
I think
that's our caption right there.
Risk management.
That's the caption. Elle's going to enjoy her evening now.
And you.
and myself as well. You're exactly right. Chris, I think we're going to wrap up. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I certainly learned a lot. I have a whole new appreciation for when I drive down the road and I see those big facilities that look like nobody's in there. And I'm sure a lot goes on inside those. And I don't know if you have a growing season, but all the best to you in your future and your growing and moving forward in your systems. That's really interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I've been wanting to get you to join us for a little while. So also my sincere thanks, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. I always enjoy our conversations.
Come again. You're definitely welcome again in the future. Have a great rest of your evening. I'm just gonna, just say goodbye to the audience now, but I want to thank all of the listeners for tuning into this podcast. You can re-listen to this episode by subscribing to our YouTube, Apple, or Spotify channels. If you have any questions for Chris or related to this episode, please don't hesitate to email us at mywatertalks@synecotech.com, or if you have ideas for future topics as well. Scott has got some great guests coming up in the spring, which we'll reveal as time goes on. Don't forget to subscribe, and obviously, press that notification bell and likes and things like that. So that's also going to be helpful. Our next episode is going to be recorded probably from the Pro Conference at Blue Mountain. Scott and I are going to both be there to connect with people on all things water as it relates to aquatics and pools and things like that, waste reduction in and around the pool. So we look forward to catching you all next month. Thank you so much. Take care.